Okay, so this presentation is going to cover the ethnicity portion of your final. So it's going to be the most extensive and the portion you're going to need to be the most familiar with if you're going to want to do well. So to begin with, these are some key words and terms you're going to need to be able to understand and distinguish from one another. State versus nation, nationalism and nationality, balkanization, and clustered ethnic distribution. I'll get into a couple of these, but some of them I won't. A state is a country, what we know as a country, and a state is a politically organized territory that is administered by a sovereign government. Um, Whereas a nation is a group of people who share a common um, heritage, language, culture, but they don't have an official state. So Kurdistan is um, is a good example of a nation. The Kurds are a nation of people. They don't have their own state, though. It is the largest ethnic group in the world without their own state. And as you can see, the Kurds occupy multiple different countries: Iran, Iraq, Syria, and Turkey. They are minorities in every country that they live in. And they are persecuted quite a bit. In the 90s, you saw it in Iraq when Saddam Hussein was at the head. And now you see a crackdown on Kurdish people in Turkey as well. So for the test, you're going to need to know that they're a minority in every state that they live in. Okay, so you're going to need to know the difference between nationalism and nationality as well. Nationalism really is patriotism, a veneration of the state. This graphic is a perfect example of American nationalism. Um, I've never seen a more American picture than this. So it's really patriotism. This is a great quote by Mark Twain. Patriotism is supporting your country all the time and your government when it deserves it. Love Mark Twain. He's got a lot of great quotes on government. Whereas nationality is official. It is your nationality is the country you reside in. So we are American. We live in America. The passport you have represents your nationality. So if you're Mexican, you have a Mexican passport, you're Mexican. This is what a nationality is. It's official. Whereas nationalism is more of an ideology. You're going to need to know about balkanization. We're going to get into that, but really it's about understanding how Yugoslavia was broken up into all these separate different states, how how big multi-nation states end up being broken up into individual states. That's the essence of Balkanism. And you're also going to need to know about clustered ethnic distribution, but I'll get into that in a second. So first, you are going to need to know about ethnic conflict, the reasons why, and the repercussions. So these are some of the reasons why. By all means, they're not all of the reasons why, but these are some that will present themselves within your test. So you have political boundaries that don't match ethnic makeup of area, multi-nation states, border disputes, struggle for political power between different groups, and struggle for autonomy. And what that means is struggle for self-determination. That's what autonomy means. You're also going to need to know about the repercussions. Which are war, occupation, and all the things that go along with that, as well as changing boundaries, to name a few. Okay, so the reasons why at different ethnic groups clash. So the first is arbitrarily drawn political boundaries that don't match ethnic groupings. So an example of that is Africa. You have all these states that were defined by colonial powers. They were created by the Western world, and these states, aka countries, pay no attention to the ethnic groupings within those areas. So you see a lot of ethnic strife and ethnic conflict in Africa even today, because where these political boundaries are only 100 or so years old, these ethnic groupings have been around for centuries, if not millennia. So naturally you're going to have conflict if multiple ethnic groups reside under one political umbrella. If that political umbrella was decided by somebody else. In Africa's case, it was the Western powers. They drew these political lines. Okay, so, and then another big reason why there's ethnic conflict is because you have multi-nation states. So what that means is you have multiple different nations, groups of people residing under one state. And what does that look like exactly, and why does that cause conflict? So, well, let's explore that a little bit. So, this is former Yugoslavia, and it has now been balkanized and broken up into multiple different countries. And why is that? Well, it's hard to pinpoint, but a lot of it has to do with national rivalries. So, an example of this is the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom is Great Britain plus Northern Ireland. So, United Kingdom is one country, but really it's a conglomerate of multiple nations. So you have Scotland, England, Wales, and then Northern Ireland right here. So, and these are the countries that comprise or that make up the United Kingdom. So if and the reason why they all came together is it's through common economic interests. So this would be the centripetal force holding multi-nation states together. Most multi-nation states. They're held together by common economic interests. Trade. They've made the decision that as one unit, political, economic, they are stronger and more efficient. So an example of that would be the European Union. Even though the European Union isn't a super state, it kind of operates as one. So you can travel until just recently, actually, you could travel all across Europe without going through border checks. You had free trade throughout here, free movement of peoples, one currency for most countries. So so operating as one unit. So in balkanization, what would it? So and really this happens a lot with multi-nation states. Once the economic interests start breaking down and economies start breaking down, you start seeing a rise in nationalism, and then when you see a rise in nationalism, that's when you'll see multi-nation states balkanize, or you can see that. Because people are vying for autonomy, self-determination. People in Croats want to decide what's best for Croatia. Slovenes want to decide what's best for Slovenia. Not all of these people, all these groups of people had the same amount of autonomy within former Yugoslavia. But now you see it's been balkanized and they have more self-determination. So what would happen if England balkanized? Well, it would kind of look like what's going on for their national soccer team. So even though the UK is one state, it has 4 different national soccer teams. You have England. This is Rooney right here, England. I don't know who these other guys are, but you have Northern Ireland, Scotland, and Wales. If Great Britain was to balkanize, those would be the lines that it balkanized along. These 4 distinct different nations, so to speak. So, and you also have struggle for autonomy. This is struggle for self-determination. This is why there's tons of ethnic conflict around the world. People want to decide for themselves, and people want to make the decisions for their group of people. Politics is all local, so to speak. An example of that would be what you see in Sri Lanka. You see decades of ethnic conflict between the Hindus and the Buddhists. The Hindus in the north are struggling for autonomy and self-determination, and the Buddhists want to keep the north part of Sri Lanka. So you see not only different ethnic groups of people, not only is it different ethnicities that is causing this conflict, but it's different religions as well. And they also speak a different language in the north. So whenever you see 2 different groups of people occupying one space, and one of those groups is a minority by a large amount, there's a good chance you will see ethnic conflict within that area, especially if they speak different languages and have different religions. So another example of this would be Eritrea and Ethiopia. So Eritrea is a relatively new country, and it was born from a civil war in Ethiopia. and really the Eritreans were trying to gain their own political autonomy apart from Ethiopia. Um, and that's just one example. These are this is the border dispute during that civil war or ethnic conflict. Uh, and these are just a couple examples that you're going to see on your test. There's multiple different examples throughout the world. Um, but we don't have time to get into them now. And so, what are the repercussions of this? You have forced migration of people. These are Eritreans moving through the desert, and when you have conflict, you'll see forced migrations of people, especially in civil wars, because you have neighbors fighting neighbors, and a lot of people don't really want to choose sides. Um, all right. So, and you also see when you see ethnic conflict, there is potential for ethnic cleansing. And so, what is ethnic cleansing? Well, ethnic cleansing or genocide, they are a little bit different. Is the complete removal of a people from an area. So, examples of this would be what we saw in class the other day: Darfur, Rwanda. These are episodes of genocide. Genocide is the killing of a complete race of people, whereas ethnic cleansing is the removing through killing or forced migration or otherwise. So that's the distinction between those two. Um, so, and also when you're thinking about ethnic conflict, you have to be familiar. You're going to have a couple questions on your final regarding occupations of countries or states. By other states. So, an example of this, if you get a question regarding occupation of Lebanon, you know it's going to be one of these countries surrounding it. So, just remember, think about your maps, think about proximity to other countries if you get any questions like that. I know this was really fast and didn't do it justice, but ethnic conflict is going to be a major portion of your test, and you just have to know the reasons why, and what it looks like, and the repercussions for that. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. So you're going to need to know the ethnic distributions in the U.S. We went over this in class already, so this is just a review. So different ethnic groups are clustered regionally as well as within urban areas. This is key. They are clustered regionally as well as within urban areas. Both of those. Ethnic cluster distribution, both regionally and urban areas. I can't stress that enough. Both of those. Okay. So this is where African Americans are clustered in the United States in the South, remnants of slavery, and the West Coast is where Asian Americans are clustered, and that's because of the proximity to Asia. And Hispanics or Latinos are clustered in the Southwest, and multiple reasons for this, but historical boundaries are a reason, proximity, work. And this is also why you see a clustering of Catholics in the Southwest as well. Most Hispanics are Catholics or consider themselves to be Catholics. So, and this is what ethnic clustering within urban areas looks like. So, if you see clustering of Hispanics, African Americans, Asians. So not only do you see ethnic clustered distribution throughout, or ethnic clustering throughout different regions in the United States, but you see it within urban areas as well. And so you're also going to need to know about different aspects of segregation. So what exactly does that look? You're not going to specifically get a question on segregation, but you're going to need to know it's the dichotomy of it, or you're going to need to know the fundamentals of it. So these are Indian reservations, and as you can see, they are located in random spots throughout the West, and really a lot of this land is uninhabitable or dang near uninhabitable. It's not very good land for cultivating, so you have Indians being forced in onto these lands by the American government, and really this is called the geographical separation of races. So an example of that, and what you'll need to know for the test as well, is South Africa. You see the exact same thing. These are called Bantustans, and these are what we would consider reservations, and that the South African government made for the indigenous peoples in South Africa. So, and the different colors represent the different ethnic groups. And in South Africa, it was particularly harsh because you couldn't travel from one to the other without a note from the government. And it was incredibly hard to get a note from the government, or a permission, so to speak. So really, if you lived right here and your mother or brother lived right here, it'd be really hard for you to go see them because you could not travel from one Bantustan to the other. Okay, so also you're going to need to know about ethnic identity and what ethnic identity is formed, and the different things ethnic identity can do politically for not only you but for the state. So an example of this that was a little confusing, it didn't help very much, but let me try to rephrase that. So an example is ethnic diversity can prevent reunification of states. So an example would be Moldova and Romania. So a lot of people in Romania want the reunification of Moldova with Romania. However, there are large ethnic populations of Ukrainians and Russians within Moldova. So it's incredibly difficult to reunify these two countries. So you're going to see these two countries remain two different countries because of the large groups of ethnic minorities within Moldova. So I know that was a little rough, but yeah, that's kind of that in a nutshell. You'll get a question like this on your test, so remember that. Also, for the purposes of the test and for the purposes of the AP Human Geography exam, race plays no part in your cultural identity. Only ethnicity does. Now, this is something I vehemently disagree with. I think this is an example of science not matching the reality on the ground. So there is scientific evidence that race is only skin deep. So basically race, there's no biological indicators of different races. However, when we look at different people and ourselves, race definitely plays a component in our cultural identity for many of us, especially if you're a minority within a particular country. So even though you and I may disagree with this, I for sure, for the purposes of this exam, you're going to need to know that. Okay, so that is the end of the ethnicity aspect. Good luck on your test. All right, let me know if you have any questions.